Very interesting story involving cartoons of Mohammed. Two Israeli cartoonists had their drawings censored at a Tel Aviv exhibit that was meant to commemorate last year's terrorist attack on the Paris offices of the satirical French magazine Charlie Hebdo. The works were allegedly censored after the French embassy expressed some concern over their portrayal of the Prophet Muhammad. And the two caricaturists involved are Vladik Sandler and Roy Friedler. They submitted these cartoons to the exhibition, which is a tribute to the 11 people, which included 5 cartoonists who were murdered in the attacks in Paris on January 7th, 2015. It's been about a year. The exhibit opened. It runs throughout January at the French Institute in central Tel Aviv. And Sandler's picture, which portrayed Muhammad as a nude model for the 5 murdered cartoonists, was removed from the exhibit altogether. Meanwhile, there was a sticker placed over an image of Muhammad in Friedler's picture of the cartoonists going up to heaven. In a Facebook post on Saturday, Sandler wrote, quote, "I sent 2 caricatures to the exhibit, and both of them touched in one way or another on the fact that since the attack, Muhammad is not being drawn in the newspaper. To my great surprise, when I arrived at the opening event of the exhibit, I discovered that after a special request from the French embassy, one of my caricatures had been removed." So what does the French Institute say about these cartoons in question? French Institute spokeswoman Anne Gaulion said, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, no caricature was removed from the wall. Due to small amount of space to hang the works, we were forced to pick one of 2 works that the artists submitted, and therefore not all of the works of the illustrators and caricaturists that were submitted were presented. There was no political interference or pressure placed on us by the French embassy." Okay, so that may be the story with regard to the removal, but not with regard to a sticker being placed over Muhammad within one cartoon. If true, doesn't this sort of defeat the entire purpose of such an exhibit?
Well, I think that it's somewhat clear that Tel Aviv and the people maybe hosting the event were not as worried as the people at the French embassy in general.
So it would seem.
So I think maybe maybe they're just afraid that some type of attack would come down on the French embassy instead of where this event was being held or something like that. I mean, I can understand being worried about that.
So can I. I mean, I'm trying to sort of think it through from a few perspectives. If you're a family member of someone who was murdered over a Muhammad cartoon, and then at a tribute to that family member, the cartoons are censored, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel as though the terrorists have won in a certain way? Or do you say, hey, you know what? I'm glad they have an event for my loved one who is now deceased. The last thing I want is political statements that are possibly going to bring negative attention or maybe even further attacks. But then the counter to that is, hey, not censoring Muhammad is not a political statement. It should just be something that can be done, drawing Muhammad. So you can sort of go back and forth. And then you're getting at the concerns in terms of security from the venue. If they don't censor it and there's an attack, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. There's likely retaliations. Everybody who is involved in the retaliations is the bad guy. If they censor it, then people are upset that they're censoring free speech. What's the right answer? Don't have the exhibit? I mean, that seems totally counterproductive.
Yeah, I think what would the cartoonists who were killed want? I think they would probably want uncensored images of Muhammad. So if it's about respecting them, paying tribute to them, I think the answer is clear.
I think that we have to consider the pragmatic realities when we do things like this, but at the same time, we can't fall into these anti-progressive, anti-free speech traps here. The Muhammad cartoons have a very important meaning within the entire Charlie Hebdo tragedy. And to say we are going to remember this with censorship of Muhammad cartoons, it does not feel right. I guess that's the bottom line. It's one of those things where when I think about it, it doesn't feel right, although I can articulate seemingly logical arguments for or against.
Yes, maybe it's easy for us to say when we are not necessarily in the line of fire. It's a tough decision, and it's one that I hope I don't have to make.